Hello. So, as I have promised, I'm continuing this thing. Today we're looking at gods. More specifically, the gods of every faction in Warhammer 40k. For starters, let's begin with something easy, the Imperium of Man. They have one singular god that is also their leader, somewhat. The god Emperor of Mankind. He once lived, now he's a lich. The Imperium of Man and pretty much humanity worships him as today's Christianity's God. As in God or Jesus or the Holy Spirit and Santa Claus. I have no idea. The next one we have Chaos. Chaos has four gods, four major gods to be more precise, and a bunch of minor gods. The four major gods are Zinj, the god of change, hope, and sorcery. Nurgle, the god of death, stagnancy, and plagues. Khorne, the god of war, murder, and blood. And Slanesh, the god of excess, sex, and pretty much any kind of depravity and the woke community. Next one, we got the Eldari. The Eldari had a whole pantheon of gods. Here's the thing. There was something that happened a long time ago, and that byproduct is Slanesh. And Slanesh kind of went on feeding frenzy. For now, we have four gods, I think, that are somewhat active. And the first god is the Laughing God. I have no idea what he's the god of. I know that his name is Chegorak or Kegorak or something like that. I think both work ish. We've got Isha. She's currently a prisoner of Nurgle and is being used as a test subject for his various plagues. She's the goddess of life. The third one we have the Kilam and Shakain, the Eldari god of war, murder, and blood. He's also shattered because he tried to fight Slanesh. He almost died. And finally we have the Sleepy One, the god of death, Inyad. It's believed in Eldari culture that once every single Eldari eventually dies, Inyad will awaken and wage war on Slanesh. That war will result in the complete and utter destruction of Slanesh and the Eldari race rebirth. That is kinda icky. The next faction we have Orcs. The boys. They have two gods, Gork and Mork. One is brutally cunning, the other one is cunningly brutal. Here's the problem. No idea which one is which. I'm pretty damn fucking sure that even the Orcs don't know, but they still worship them because war. Next one, we have the Tau. The Tau are the newest kid on the block. They are a significantly younger race. Compared to the Imperium, they are far more technologically advanced in some aspects. In others, they're lacking severely. Also, they're extremely naive. They would believe almost anybody. Consider that once they believed the Drukari group, that was fun. They have something called for the greater good or the greater good. It doesn't exactly have a name, but as far as I remember, it has a body that is currently manifesting in the warp. The warp is the Immaterium, the Sea of Souls. As far as I remember, it's still developing, so we might eventually hear something about that. Or maybe not. And GW pretty much crashes down. Next we have the Tyranids. Tyranids, they don't exactly have a god. Okay, next one. There's also a few other minor factions, but they're some are way too fucking old, others are way too freaking new, so I will cover them eventually, but that whole topic I'm leaving for last one. Finally, we have the necrons and their gods. Their gods are very, very specific beings. They have existed since the very creation of the galaxy, of any galaxy, since the beginning of reality, if you would like to call it that. At the beginning, these beings were just collection of gases, energies, and radiation that just roamed the Milky Way galaxy and fed upon stars, suns. They didn't exactly give a shit. Yes, they eventually developed some kind of a consciousness, but they still didn't care from what kind of star they fed upon. And they consumed those stars to keep living. From there to theories how these space gases eventually met the Necron tier. First idea is that through the atrocity the beginning of the war in heaven caused, the space gases were attracted to that conflict and eventually made contact with the Necron tier. The other idea is that the Necron tier actually were looking for something to enhance their weapon arsenal and maybe help them in the current war. Well, they found those space gases. And those space gases got a name, Catan. In the Necrontyr language, it means star god. These star gods, they were worshipped as gods by the Necrontyr. And the Necrontyr are severely ancestral. As far as I know, when the Necrontyr created the bodies out of necrodermis is a living metal that the Necrons use. That living metal is pretty much like skin. It just grows back, reknits itself, heals itself, etc. So they created these the bodies in the likes of the Necrontyr gods. Yes, the Necrontyr had gods, but they were purely, you could say fictional-ish, because as far as I know, the Necrontyr were the only race that didn't had any version of a psyker among them. So when they created the bodies out of necrodermis for the Catan possessed those bodies and basically became one being. The Catan were basically instrumental in the whole war. You could say that they're the first material gods that could bend reality as they saw fit. It's either through their own power or through the technology that was stored into their new bodies. But during the war, the Catan pretty much, since they started starving again, they managed to convince, well, one particular star god managed to convince the Silent King to go through something called the biotransference, which is a genocide. The Necrontyr went through this biotransference. Their bodies were stripped, their minds downloaded and installed into new, more powerful metallic bodies made out of the same material, the necrodermis, and their souls were used as breakfast for the Catan. The Catan fed upon the Necrontyr souls. When finally the byproduct came out, the metallic skeletons, those that had stronger will survived with their minds intact. Those that didn't were left as automatons. A whole race ritually sacrificing itself. You could call it that. I like genocide. It's a funny word. Oh. After the biotransfers, the entire Necron tier race was gone, and in its place, the Necrons emerged. A undying army that swept the galaxy once more. This time, they had no problem with space, vacuum, hunger, thirst, or anything like that. Even the cancer that plagued their entire race was gone. And the war in heaven continued. The Necrons eventually won the war. Oh, there were some heavy losses. Some solar systems no longer exist, but what can you do when you're waging a war that is, if you think about it, is pretty much the worst atrocity ever committed. Ever. In reality. Oh, after the war in heaven was over, the Milky Way galaxy was burning, the Necrons saw fit that it's time for their final move. They rebelled against the Star Gods. The Star Gods were shattered into pieces. Every single piece was locked into a Tesseract vault, a very particular, interesting type of technology that the Necrons have. After that shatter, the Necrons went for a nap that pretty much lasted for 60 million years, which leads us to today, current setting. In the current setting, the Catan shards are used as weapons. They are extremely powerful weapons. Every time when a Necron dynasty decides to use that, it's a last resort. It's something that must be done only when there is no other option. Or they're fighting something that is extremely powerful. They've, they've had a few of those situations. If, say, a shard of a Catan manages to escape its confines from that particular Tesseract vault, then it will start wreaking havoc upon its masters. And don't get me wrong, a fully formed Catan is a hell on wheels. A shard of it, still bad, but not as powerful as the whole thing. Basically, when you shatter a Catan, those shards are a smaller version of the original body. It's like a mini-me, but genocidal, that feeds on souls. And that's pretty much what I have to tell you about the Catan. They have a bigger role to play in the war in heaven. So, enjoy your day, may the gods be with you, and the very concept of a god in the material world that can fold reality. You noob.